Have you ever felt the crushing weight of scarcity holding you back, no matter how hard you pray or how faithfully you live? That persistent shadow of not enough that follows you despite your devotion? Today, I'm about to share with you a powerful teaching from Padre Pio that has remained hidden from most believers. A simple yet profound ritual involving your hands on Good Friday that has transformed the lives of thousands who have discovered it. This isn't just another spiritual practice. It's a divine doorway to abundance that the beloved saint revealed to only his closest followers during his lifetime. Before I reveal this sacred wisdom that could fundamentally change your relationship with abundance forever, you need to understand something crucial about Padre Pio's approach to spiritual wealth. He understood, perhaps better than any other modern saint, that our hands are not just tools for work. They are instruments of divine connection, channels through which God's blessings can flow into our material world. The stigmata that marked his own hands for 50 years was not just a sign of his suffering with Christ, but also a testament to the profound connection between our physical bodies and spiritual realities. What you do with your hands matters more than you might ever have realized. This teaching isn't about quick fixes or magical thinking. Padre Pio would be the first to caution against such misunderstandings. Instead, it's about aligning yourself with divine timing, sacred symbols, and the powerful current of grace that flows especially strong on Good Friday, the day when heaven and earth converge in the mystery of Christ's sacrifice. The saint taught that on this holy day, a window opens between the spiritual and material realms, creating a unique opportunity for those who approach with sincere hearts and clean hands. Are you ready to discover how the simple act of washing your hands with a specific blessed element could break the chains of limitation in your life and welcome the abundance God has always intended for you? Your hands tell the story of your life. They have worked, worried, prayed, and perhaps even struck out in anger. They've grasped tightly to things you feared losing and have remained empty when you desperately wanted them filled. Padre Pio understood that our hands carry not just physical dirt but spiritual residue, the invisible traces of our struggles, sins, and sorrows. The ritual he taught was not merely symbolic but deeply spiritual in nature. When you wash your hands with blessed water on Good Friday, you're not just performing a cleansing act. You're participating in a profound spiritual purification that echoes Christ's own gesture of washing his disciples' feet before his sacrifice. The timing of this ritual is no coincidence. Good Friday stands as a pivotal moment in the spiritual calendar, a day when the veil between heaven and earth grows thin, and divine grace flows more abundantly than usual. Padre Pio explained to his spiritual children that on this sacred day, as we commemorate Christ's ultimate sacrifice, we are invited to participate in a mysterious exchange. By willingly emptying ourselves through this ritual washing, we create space for God to fill. It's a paradoxical spiritual principle that Padre Pio observed throughout his life. Those who symbolically empty their hands in surrender often find them refilled with unexpected blessings. The saint witnessed this pattern repeatedly among those who followed this teaching with genuine faith. What makes this ritual particularly powerful is not the physical elements involved, but the interior disposition it both requires and cultivates. Padre Pio insisted that the washing of hands must be accompanied by a sincere heart, ready to receive abundance not for selfish gain, but as stewards of divine provision. He often said, "Clean hands are those that know how to both receive and give away." This balanced approach to abundance distinguished his teaching from superficial prosperity doctrines. The ritual isn't about becoming wealthy for wealth's sake, but about removing the spiritual blockages that prevent you from experiencing the fullness of what God wants to provide through you to others. When performed with this understanding, the Good Friday hand washing becomes not just a ritual, but a profound act of faith and receptivity. The preparation for this sacred ritual begins not with the elements themselves, but with your heart. Padre Pio taught that the 3 days leading up to Good Friday should be a time of intentional reflection on areas where you've been grasping too tightly or operating from scarcity rather than trust. Have you been anxious about finances? Jealous of others' prosperity? Unwilling to share from what you have? These attitudes create spiritual barriers to abundance that no ritual alone can overcome. The saint recommended a simple evening examination during Holy Week, where you ask God to reveal these abundance-blocking mindsets. This interior preparation ensures that the external ritual won't be merely symbolic, but truly transformative. Now for the physical preparation. According to Padre Pio's teaching, you'll need to gather 3 specific elements: pure spring water, ideally collected from a natural source, 3 fresh bay leaves, representing faith, hope, and charity, and a small amount of salt, symbolizing wisdom and preservation. These elements should be placed in a clean white bowl the evening before Good Friday, and if possible, brought to church for blessing during the Holy Thursday service. If having them blessed by a priest isn't possible, Padre Pio taught that a sincere prayer over these elements while making the sign of the cross 3 times would suffice. He emphasized that God looks at the intention of the heart more than the perfect execution of any ritual. The preparation itself becomes a meditation on the abundance you're inviting into your life. The final preparatory step involves creating a sacred space in your home where the ritual will take place on Good Friday morning, ideally around 3 p.m., the traditional hour of Christ's death. This space doesn't need to be elaborate, but it should be clean, quiet, and free from distractions. A small table covered with a white cloth, a candle representing Christ's light, and perhaps an image of Jesus or Padre Pio creates the appropriate atmosphere. The saint taught that this attention to creating sacred space signals to both your subconscious mind and the spiritual realm that what you're about to do is significant and set apart. If you believe this teaching can transform your relationship with abundance the same way it has for thousands of devoted followers, write in the comments, "I am ready for this blessing." Subscribe to our channel now to never miss these life-changing spiritual revelations that the modern church rarely discusses. As Good Friday arrives and you approach the sacred hour, the ritual itself unfolds in beautiful simplicity, just as Padre Pio intended. Begin by pouring the prepared water, now infused with bay leaves and salt, into the white bowl placed in your sacred space. Light the candle beside it, signifying Christ's presence even in the darkness of this solemn day. Then, standing before your small altar with reverence, recite the prayer Padre Pio taught. Lord Jesus, who on this day emptied yourself completely for love of me, I come with empty, open hands. As I wash away all spiritual impurity, wash away also my fears of scarcity, my doubts in your providence, and any greed that closes my heart to your generous flow. With these clean hands, I stand ready to receive what you wish to give and to share what I receive. The washing itself should be done with mindful intention, not rushed or mechanical. Padre Pio instructed that you should immerse your hands fully in the water, gently rubbing them together 3 times while reflecting on what each motion represents. The first immersion symbolizes releasing false beliefs about abundance. The idea that God's blessings are scarce or that you are somehow unworthy of receiving them. The second immersion represents cleansing your hands of any unethical means you've used or considered using to gain wealth, cutting corners, dishonesty, or exploiting others. The third and final immersion prepares your hands to become channels of giving, not just receiving, for Padre Pio insisted that true abundance always flows through us to others, never terminating in selfish accumulation. After completing the washing, don't dry your hands immediately. Instead, hold them palms up before you, allowing the blessed water to air dry while you pray in silence for a few moments. Padre Pio explained that this waiting period has deep symbolic meaning. It represents your willingness to wait for God's timing in bringing abundance into your life. As the water evaporates, visualize any remaining barriers to receiving God's provision dissolving away with it. When your hands are completely dry, the ritual concludes with a gesture the saint considered essential, extending your hands outward as if already giving from what you've yet to receive. This prophetic action demonstrates faith and ensures the proper circulation of blessings once they arrive. Remember, as Padre Pio often said, hands that only grasp never truly receive. The physical ritual, while powerful, is only the beginning. Padre Pio taught that for the Good Friday hand washing to truly transform your relationship with abundance, you must understand and embrace what he called the 3 pillars of divine prosperity. The first pillar is gratitude, not the superficial thankfulness that comes easily in times of plenty, but the deep, soul-anchoring gratitude that recognizes God's provision even when it's not obvious. After completing the ritual, Padre Pio instructed his followers to spend the remainder of Good Friday identifying and giving thanks for forms of abundance already present in their lives, no matter how small. This practice rewires your spiritual and psychological orientation toward recognizing provision rather than lack, creating fertile ground for greater blessings to take root. The second pillar is stewardship, understanding that all resources flowing into your life come with sacred responsibility. Padre Pio was adamant that the hand-washing ritual would actually repel material blessings if one's intention was merely self-enrichment. God is not interested in making you rich, he would tell his spiritual children, but in making you a rich blessing to others. The saint recommended that following the Good Friday ritual, you should make a concrete plan for how you'll manage and share any increase that comes your way. This might mean deciding on a percentage to give to those in need, identifying specific causes you'll support, or determining how you'll use your resources to create opportunities for others. This pillar transforms the energy of the ritual from potentially self-serving to aligned with divine purposes. The third and final pillar is patience, perhaps the most challenging but necessary element for sustainable abundance. Padre Pio cautioned against expecting immediate, dramatic results, though he acknowledged these sometimes occurred. Instead, he taught that the Good Friday ritual often set in motion subtle shifts that accumulated over time, new opportunities, appearing unexpected resources being discovered, or harmful financial patterns finally breaking. God's time frame is rarely ours, he would remind those eager for instant transformation. The saint recommended keeping a small journal following the ritual, noting even minor positive changes in your financial situation or relationship with material resources. This practice builds faith during the waiting period and trains you to recognize divine provision in its many forms, whether dramatic or subtle, immediate or gradual. With great spiritual power comes necessary caution, and Padre Pio was careful to include specific warnings about the Good Friday ritual that many of his followers have gratefully heeded. Chief among these was his stern admonition against approaching this sacred practice with materialistic motives. Those who seek abundance merely to accumulate will find the ritual empties rather than fills their lives, he cautioned. The saint explained that the universe responds not to our external actions, but to our interior dispositions. If your heart harbors greed, entitlement, or selfish intent, the ritual may actually accelerate lessons about detachment rather than bringing the abundance you envision. Padre Pio suggested an honest examination of conscience before undertaking the practice, asking yourself, would I still perform this ritual if the abundance it brought could not be spent on me, but only channeled through me to others? Equally important was Padre Pio's warning against ritualistic superstition. He emphasized repeatedly that the power of the Good Friday hand-washing doesn't lie in the exact elements used or precise words spoken, but in the spiritual principles activated through faithful participation. Some of his followers became obsessed with perfect execution, seeking specific types of bay leaves, using only certain containers, or becoming anxious if the ritual couldn't be performed at exactly 3 p.m. The saint gently but firmly corrected this approach. God looks at the heart, not the performance. Approaching the ritual with flexible reverence rather than rigid superstition opens the door to genuine spiritual engagement rather than mechanical religious practice. The elements matter, but your sincere intention matters infinitely more. The final warning Padre Pio offered touches on perhaps the most subtle spiritual danger, allowing your faith to become centered on prosperity rather than on God himself. When abundance begins to flow, he observed, many forget the source and become enamored with the provision. The saint noted with sadness how some who experienced financial breakthroughs following the Good Friday ritual gradually stopped their other spiritual practices, reducing their relationship with God to a transactional arrangement focused on material gain. To guard against this drift, he advised maintaining a prosperity Sabbath, a monthly day when you intentionally practice simplicity, fasting from purchases and spending time in prayer, reconnecting with God beyond what he provides. This regular reset helps ensure that abundance remains a blessing, rather than becoming a spiritual stumbling block. The power of Padre Pio's Good Friday teaching becomes most evident in the lives it has transformed. Ordinary people who, with nothing but faith and clean water, experienced extraordinary shifts in their relationship with abundance. Consider Maria from Naples, a widow struggling to support 3 children after her husband's business failed, leaving her with mounting debts. After learning the hand-washing ritual from one of Padre Pio's spiritual daughters, she faithfully performed it on Good Friday with her children gathered around her in their small apartment. With no immediate resources to give, she symbolically offered her time instead, volunteering at her parish that very weekend. Within 3 weeks, the landlord of her building, moved by what he called an inexplicable impulse, forgave 2 months of back rent. The following month, a distant relative who had never before shown interest in her family's welfare reached out with an offer to fund her oldest son's education. By the next Easter, Maria had found stable employment and begun gradually repaying her debts. It wasn't instant riches, she later shared, but a series of small mercies that created a path forward when there seemed to be none. Or consider Antonio, a skilled craftsman whose workshop had sat nearly empty for months as economic hardship swept through his region. A devout follower of Padre Pio, he performed the Good Friday ritual with particular attention to the third pillar: patience. Rather than desperately seeking customers, he used his involuntary downtime to create 3 beautiful pieces, deciding he would donate them to his church regardless of his financial situation. The morning after completing the ritual, a stranger appeared at his workshop, having taken a wrong turn on the way to another destination. Struck by Antonio's craftsmanship visible through the window, this visitor placed a modest order. This first order led to a referral, which led to another. Within 6 months, Antonio had more work than he could handle alone and hired 2 apprentices from families facing financial hardship. The abundance that came wasn't just financial, Antonio reflected. It was the abundance of purpose, of being able to create beauty and opportunity for others when I had almost given up hope. Perhaps most striking is Lucia's story, not because of material gain but because of a profound shift in perspective. A wealthy woman by conventional standards, Lucia performed the ritual not seeking more possessions but freedom from the constant anxiety about money that plagued her despite her comfortable circumstances. The transformation that followed wasn't in her bank account but in her relationship with what she already had. For the first time, she shared with Padre Pio himself during a visit to San Giovanni Rotondo, "I understand that abundance isn't about accumulation, but about circulation." Lucia began systematically simplifying her life, selling possessions that had become burdens rather than blessings, and creating a foundation to support educational opportunities for disadvantaged youth. Her material wealth actually decreased, but her experience of abundance expanded exponentially. "I finally understand what you meant," she told the saint, "about clean hands being able both to receive and to give away. What begins as a simple ritual for personal abundance often creates unexpected ripple effects that extend far beyond the individual." Something Padre Pio observed repeatedly among those who embraced this teaching. Many reported that within months of performing the Good Friday hand-washing, they found themselves becoming more generous not just with money but with time, attention, and emotional support, often without conscious effort. The saint explained this phenomenon as the natural unfolding of authentic abundance consciousness. When we truly understand that God's supply is infinite, withholding makes no sense. One businessman who had carefully guarded his professional knowledge as a competitive advantage found himself spontaneously mentoring younger colleagues. A formerly budget-conscious mother discovered herself regularly preparing extra food to share with a struggling neighbor family. These expansions of generosity weren't planned outcomes of the ritual, but organic expressions of a fundamentally altered relationship with abundance. Perhaps more surprising were the community transformations that sometimes emerged when several people in close proximity performed the ritual with sincere hearts. Padre Pio documented cases of small villages in Italy where, following a collective embrace of the Good Friday practice, long-standing conflicts over resources began to resolve. Collaborative economic initiatives emerged spontaneously, and a general atmosphere of sufficiency replaced the previous undercurrent of competition and scarcity. Begin preparing your heart today. Gather the simple elements tomorrow, and by next Good Friday you could be experiencing the divine flow that has transformed thousands of lives through this sacred wisdom. Remember that true abundance isn't measured in what you accumulate, but in how freely blessings can flow to and through you. And it all begins with clean hands, open to both receive and give. In one Sicilian fishing community, following a particularly difficult season that had strained relationships between rival fishing families, the parish priest introduced the hand-washing teaching to his congregation. That year, an unprecedented abundance of fish appeared in their waters. Rather than competing for the catch, the families developed a cooperative approach that ensured sustainable harvesting and fair distribution. The priest later wrote to Padre Pio, "The miracle was not the fish, but the transformation of hearts that had forgotten how to share." The saint noted that these ripple effects often manifested in three distinct waves. The first wave typically involved increased personal generosity, as described above. The second wave often brought healing to broken relationships, particularly those damaged by financial disputes or resource competition. Siblings who hadn't spoken since inheritance disagreements found their way back to each other. Business partnerships severed by mistrust were cautiously rekindled. The third and most profound wave affected one's spiritual relationship with the material world itself. Many reported a gradual dissolution of the artificial boundary between spiritual and material prosperity. Work became prayer, earning became stewardship. Spending became an act of conscious circulation rather than consumption. When properly understood, Padre Pio explained, this simple ritual doesn't just change what you have. It transforms who you are in relationship to everything you touch. The Good Friday ritual creates a powerful opening, but Padre Pio emphasized that sustaining and expanding its effects requires daily practices that reinforce its core principles. He suggested beginning each morning with what he called the abundance affirmation, a brief moment of extending your hands palms up while saying, "My hands are clean and open today, ready to receive with gratitude and give with joy." This simple practice, taking less than 30 seconds, serves as a physical and mental reset, countering the unconscious attitudes of scarcity or grasping that might otherwise shape your day. Many followers who maintained this practice reported that it gradually transformed their default orientation toward material concerns from anxiety to trust, from suspicion to receptivity, creating continuous openings for unexpected provision. Beyond this morning ritual, Padre Pio provided practical guidance for navigating daily financial decisions in alignment with the abundance consciousness activated by the Good Friday washing. He advocated what he called prosperous simplicity, a middle path between ascetic denial of material enjoyment and indulgent consumption. This approach involves regularly asking 3 questions before significant purchases or financial commitments. Does this resource flow through me to create more value, or does it merely stop with my enjoyment? Is this acquisition aligned with my deepest values or merely responding to external pressures? Will this use of resources create space in my life or fill it with complications? These discernment questions, when honestly engaged, naturally guide financial choices toward true abundance rather than the illusion of prosperity created by accumulation. They ensure that the increased resources potentially flowing from the Good Friday ritual contribute to genuine well-being rather than complicating your life. The final daily implementation involves what Padre Pio considered perhaps the most powerful, but overlooked abundance practice: intentional recognition and celebration of provision as it manifests. He encouraged keeping a simple abundance journal, where each evening you record at least 3 ways abundance flowed to or through you that day. Not just financial provision, but all forms of wealth, including relationships, knowledge, opportunities, or moments of beauty and joy. What we appreciate, appreciates, he often reminded his spiritual children. This regular acknowledgement serves multiple purposes. It trains your perception to notice the many forms of abundance already present. It creates a documented record that builds faith during inevitable periods of perceived lack. And most importantly, It cultivates the gratitude that Padre Pio considered the essential foundation for all genuine prosperity. The Good Friday ritual may open the door, but these daily practices keep it from closing again amid life's constant challenges and distractions. Don't wait for a perfect time to begin implementing this powerful teaching from Padre Pio. The moment to transform your relationship with abundance through this profound spiritual practice is now, tonight, before you even fall asleep. As the saint himself would say, empty hands filled with faith never remain empty for long.